Get some tunages happening. What do we want to listen to today? A little bit of rock. What's up, guys? On over here. Let me go over here to my YouTube stream. Make sure that on mute. There we go. Good idea, Omar. That. Come on. Loading it up here, guys. Bear with me. Give me a second. As usual, let's give this video a couple of minutes for the notifications to go out and people to file into the room so that we can have ourselves a wonderful discussion here on this very beautiful, happy Saturday. Hope you're all doing very well out there. And I hope that this guy goes here really quick. Hopefully I don't get hit for this music. Oh, what's going on here? Alright guys, share this out please and give this video a like so that we can confuse the algorithm and have it so that it serves this video to other people out there. This is going to be a very interesting discussion that we're going to have here today with our buddy John Mayberry. We talked about this before, and we are going to talk about it again here today. NDE and cosmic consciousness, Christ consciousness, source consciousness, whatever label we want to call it. There we go. That was getting a little bit noisy. Next time I'm not going to do that. I don't like noise like that. Just like. So what is up, my friends? My name is Omar, coming at you guys from West Coast, British Columbia, Canada. I'm a host here at Watchers Talk. We have some very, very cool things coming up for you guys in the next week. As you guys know, we have our Humanity Unplugged coming up on March the 12th. That is roughly in 6 days from now. So after this video, I will share a link with you guys so you can head on over there, set your notifications, and set a reminder so that you don't miss out on the opening and the opening day of our most epic conference to date ever. We have 120 speakers confirmed. 11 days. We're going to be talking about like all kinds of stuff, man. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. It's from ancient history to ETE to UFOs to love, consciousness, you name it. We pretty much have everything. And also, we're going to be featuring a film on March the 22nd by James Bonato. But I'll get into that here really quick. Let's bring our guest on. Big John Mayberry. Thank you very much, brother, for giving me your day here, giving me some time, and coming up here and giving us an upload on things that people are not really too familiar with or have a full awareness of. So we're going to have ourselves an open discussion here today, learn about you, and introduce you to our audience because you are one of the speakers on Humanity Unplugged. In fact, you are on day one. We're going to set that tempo, that really beautiful energy tempo throughout that day, and it's going to set it forth for the rest of the event. So thank you, John. Appreciate you, brother.
You're very welcome.
I'm so happy that I got to connect with you because we've been talking on Messenger for like a year and a half or so, something like that, maybe even 2 years. And I'm just really appreciative that we can connect like this face to face on our show and have ourselves a conversation. And you're a fan of Watchers Talk as well, so it's always makes it even better to have a fan come on and give us an upload and have a discussion.
Yeah, thank you for all your work. I've been amazed at the quality of speakers that you've had on. Been a tremendous amount of downloaded information already.
Thanks, brother. Thanks. We got Sean G in the house. Free France. Free the world, man. Free the world. Free Australia. Free USA. Free Canada. Free this beautiful bioorganism that lives in space and has consciousness, and we should stop bombing it. Right, John? We should
Yep.
respect it and live in harmony with it more so than what we're doing here today.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in the next week or so. And because I've come to realize that what we're going through is not only external, it's internal.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to work internal and let it project out into the world.
Beautiful, beautiful, John, because the name of our event is Humanity Unplugged, Explore the Internal. Right, that's the title of it, and the reason why I called it that, and I shouldn't say we, Rob and I, reason why we called it that is because we feel that the more you raise your awareness and the more internal you go, the more the external seems to make sense. Now, whether that's the side product of going internal and then creating that reality and it's manifesting and you think that that's what's happening, I like that. I like that mystery, and I like the idea that if we go internal, we can create the external from the internal. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, you need to understand. Well, everybody I think understands that everything starts in the mind with the thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then that thought is projected out, whether you go do that thought with your hands or whatever that is. It's thought of first and then it's manifested.
Okay, so John, before we go further into our show, I wanted to play a trailer, right? And before I play that trailer, please introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about yourself. And once you did that, then I'll play the trailer because I feel the trailer, runs parallel and resonates with your experience. So, after you introduce yourself, I'll play that, and then we'll begin our conversation. And I think that will make a whole lot more sense because I'd really like to feature this trailer. It's about 2 minutes long, and I think it'll really set a tempo for our conversation here as well.
Great, I think so too. Well, I'm 62 years old.
Really?
Been around the block a few times. My name is John Mayberry. I've picked the hardest roads usually to go down, and I've had a few scary experiences. Twice now I've had NDEs. The first one wasn't as life-changing as the second one. We'll probably touch on the second one this next time we get together. But I think the video probably will get a good start. Sounds like the one you have lined up would be a good start to get us going in the right direction. Are you keying up the video? Like, no voice on you, Omar.
Oh shit! I must be stoned, bro, because just sitting here talking and realized, right on. I was saying, you're 62. You don't look 62, bro. You look very young. So that's awesome, right? That's great. I'm gonna put the video on now. Okay, John.
Sure. Yes. Go ahead.
Of the near-death experience in the United States alone. The stories of NDE survivors are both uniquely personal.
Go like that. I'll put it on full screen.
There are more than 10 million documented
James
accounts
Bonato,
of the near-death experience in the United States alone. The stories of NDE survivors are both uniquely personal and eerily similar. Here are some who tell us, in their own words, what happened to them when they died.
I'm Peter Panagore. I died ice climbing.
My name is Jennifer Dean, and my near-death experience was from an adverse reaction to chemotherapy treatments.
My name is Chris Batts. My near-death experience was my suicide attempt.
My name is Sharon Milliman, and I died when I was struck by lightning.
I could see this darkness extending sort of from my peripheral vision outward into infinity. And I remember wondering, what is this?
Because a lot of people think the dark would be like a scary place. Not at all.
Then I felt this ultimate presence where I knew it was God.
It was complete peace.
I was comfortable. I was fearless. I was home. I was me.
I felt a bunch of love behind this entity. I didn't see it with my eyes. I just felt it.
I heard it inside of myself, and it said to me without language, I'm taking you.
I want you now.
And it shows me my human life. And in my human life, it sees all of my dark corners.
I saw my whole life, and it was black and white, and it was really fast, and then it was over really quick. It was everything from the time I was born until the day, that moment that I died.
And then in the softest voice, he was like, you have so much to do for so many people.
They tell me that I am welcome to stay. However, my soul came here, my oversoul, for a mission that is quite significant.
From that point on, I've never been the same person.
Death is beautiful. It is just as beautiful as birth, but we fear it so much because we think it's the end. It is anything but the end.
Oh, wow.
Great little video.
Yeah, that's a short trailer from James Bonato. It's about an hour and 5 minutes long that we're going to be featuring on March 22nd at about 12 o'clock, 12:15 p.m. So guys, that's going to be a really good one. And then we'll have a conversation with James Bonato afterwards about this film. Now, John, you've had an NDE experience yourself. Please tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, let me go into just a touch of backstory, because it really starts to make sense when you hear the backstory. I've actually had 2 NDEs, and like I was saying, I think we need to save the second one for our next talk. It's a little different. Like a lot of people, I was just living life like everybody lives life, partying and doing too many drugs and just having a good old time trying to survive. I used to go to the river when I lived in Phoenix, the Salt River, and go tubing on a regular basis. And there's an area in the river that it gets quite fast, about halfway down between the 2 points that you'd put in and get out at. And so 2 or 3 times we go down through there, and you can feel the force in an inner tube. When you're sitting in the inner tube, you can feel the force pulling on you as you're going down the water.
Mm-hmm.
So one time I was probably a little too stoned and thought, you know, it'd be really cool to go down without my tube. And I'm a good, strong swimmer. I never had an issue with water and stuff like that. And I didn't think it was going to be a problem. So I get out of my tube, you know, 150 yards or so above this area where the water whirlpools around and speeds up quite a bit. The closer we get, I'm feeling the power. I'm feeling the energy of the water, and it's pulling on me. And I'm doing pretty good treading water and keeping my head above water. And, you know, fighting it quite a bit. It was quite a challenge to keep my head above the water. Well, I get to the end, and there's a abutment of rock that comes out in the river. The river could go off to the right or go off to the left and then whirlpool around and come back around again. So I get through the first time, and I'm like, "Oh man, that was pretty amazing." I was out of breath, had no energy left. It pretty much took everything I had to make it that first time. Well, it pulled me to the left rather than pulled me to the right, and it drew me right back into the whirlpool. Before I even had a chance to take a breath, I'm a foot underwater fighting to get above water with very little energy left. And I'm, you know, fighting. And I get to a point where I'm thinking, and this is kind of funny, I've told other people this and they kind of laugh. I'm thinking, wow, my name's going to be in the paper this week, because there was usually a drowning at least once a week going down that river. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be famous. I guess this is my turn. And so that thought goes through my head. And then the second thought goes through my head is, well, let's see, in a whirlpool, the whirlpool's got to go down to a certain point, and then it's got to come back up somewhere else. So at that moment, I thought, I'm not coming up. I'm ready to breathe water. My only chance was to let it take me wherever it was going to take me. And then hopefully I had enough energy to pop back up on the other side. And the moment I gave up, basically said, this is it. I'm done. I'm going to have my name in the paper. My NDE started. I'm underwater still now. And I think most people who's had NDEs can identify with the time dilation that you get. I'm sure I wasn't under more than seconds, but it seemed like minutes, if not hours. I had a life review, like people talk about, in reverse. So from that moment that I said I'm willing to give up my life, you know, is either make it or don't make it, I had a life review, basically saw every moment of my life in reverse. And the last memory that I have before I actually popped up out of the water was looking at a child being born in a hospital. I was up in the corner of the room, and I couldn't identify the woman having the child. I couldn't identify, obviously, any things that I was seeing. Just the last vision I had was watching a baby being born. And then I popped out of the water, and there was just so happened to be a tuber right there when I popped out of water. And I'm like, thank God you were there. And it felt like somebody had grabbed me around the chest and pulled me up out of the water. It was a quite interesting event, but it didn't have that much impact on my life at that time. I just thought, oh man, I was lucky.
That's quite the set of sequences that you went through. You know, I'd like to understand the flash, right? Like the life flash, right? And the baby being born. So you went backwards to that point?
Yeah,
You think that baby was like you incarnating into the world, and it took you like right back to like point zero?
Yeah, I'm relatively certain now that is exactly the case. It was a hospital. 1959 is when I was born. Mom would have been in the hospital. I know I was born in a hospital. Again, there's no identifying features that I can recall, just the memory of seeing a baby being born and then popping out of the water. So I hadn't been born at that moment, but I was still in the corner of the room when I popped up out of water.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
then
find
the memory,
Yeah, I find that little symbolic as well, because when you're being born, you're popping out of water. And then here in your NDE, you're popping out of water as well. Have you made any significant connections between the two?
yeah, actually, I have quite a bit. It like I say, in those years, I was still partying, and and I didn't give it much thought until about probably 15, 20 years later. I started thinking about reflecting. As we age, we reflect on things in our life, and I started looking at situations where uh, I had almost been killed or died in other situations, and how I can look back and see those crossroads where the opportunity for me not to be here was quite quite large. And I
Mm-hmm.
started thinking about that, and I thought at that moment that there's absolutely was seeing my own birth. There's just no doubt in my mind. Could it have been all in my mind? Well, of course it could have. But back then, I didn't get into any of this esoteric stuff. I wasn't spiritual. I probably at that time I probably never even heard of NDEs.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever occurred to me came out of nowhere. It didn't come from other experiences or other knowledge or books or anything that I had read. Uh, I'm not an avid reader, and at that moment in my life, 23 years old or 21 years old, I probably only read a dozen books in my whole entire life.
Yeah, I find this interesting. And as you were saying this, I had a recollection in memory. Way back in the day, I would say I was probably about the same age as yourself, about 23, 24. And I was at the time living in Edmonton, Alberta, just the province next door to us. And so I decided one day that I was going to hitchhike to Vancouver, and that's about 1,500 kilometers, 1,600 kilometers. And I was like, it's going to be an adventure. It's going to be fantastic, and I'm going to have fun doing this. So I packed my bag and I headed out. For the first little while, it was everything worked out pretty good, and I got into British Columbia, in the province I'm in now, and actually not too far from here, I got caught in a rainstorm, and this was about September, and so it got pretty cool at night, and I thought I'd be okay, and this guy picked me up, and he's like, I can drop you off at Williams Lake, and you can grab a hotel for the night and carry on tomorrow. But I saw the sun, and my ignorance, I was like, no, I'll be okay. Somebody will pick me up, and I'll end up in Vancouver by early morning, so all good. I underestimated things, and so he's like, okay. So he dropped me off, and I was still damp from being rained on earlier. So I started to walk down the highway, and the highway was so dark that I couldn't see my hand in front of me, John, like this. I just simply couldn't see it. And the only light I would get was when a semi would drive by or a car would drive by. And eventually I made it to this stop. And by this time I was frozen, right? I was in trouble, and made it to this like gas station spot, but it was so late that they were closed. And there was a couple of guys fixing a Camaro in the parking lot. And my hands were so frozen that I needed a smoke. I was like, I better have a smoke before I freeze to death here. And so I went up to the dudes and I said, hey, can you pull out a smoke for me and light it for me, because my hands are frozen. And he just looked at me. He's like, oh, okay. So you lit a smoke for me. And I went and stood by the light, and I was standing there freezing and having a smoke. And then this truck pulled out, right? And when this truck pulled out, I thought they were pulling out for me because they pulled over. So I ran up to the truck and I opened it, and I startled the people inside. It was an Aboriginal grandmother and grandfather with their granddaughter, and they were taking a trip up to Terrace, going north instead of south. And they saw me in trouble, right? They're like, oh my God, this guy is in like some serious trouble. And they pulled me into the truck. And from that point, I don't recall anything, right? Like, I just passed out, or I'm not really quite sure what happened. But next morning, I woke up in a hotel room, and I was dry. It was warm, and I would say that's like the closest I've ever come to a death experience, right? Because I was having my final smoke, as far as I was concerned, because I was going to be found frozen to death on the side of the highway, but it didn't turn out to be like that. So, when people talk about like near death experiences and these things that happen to them, I just wonder, did I reach that point, or did I get pulled back just on the brink and I just simply passed out and nothing happened?
Yeah, that's interesting. I've had situations similar to that. Not exactly, but as I've gotten more spiritual later in life, I started thinking about those. And, people talk about, guardian angels or your higher self, or, whatever you want to name that entity that seems to be watching over us out there. In your situation, it sounds like situations that I've had where that guardian at that moment took over and guided whatever path you were on at that moment in time.
Yeah, I find that to be the case as well. I've thought about it over the years, but really haven't focused in on it, right? But I found it interesting because I woke up in this hotel room, almost 1,000 kilometers from my destination. When I was in Williams Lake, I was only about 400 kilometers, 500 kilometers from Vancouver, and I ended up going north. And after these people, I got up, had breakfast with them, and then they tried to give me money. Right? That that was the part that I found a little bit funny at the time. Right? It's just my ignorance. They tried to give me $50, and because they thought that I was broke and I was hitchhiking and I had nothing better to do. But I had I had enough money with me. I had credit cards, and I had enough resources that I can take care of myself, right? And I tried to tell them that, but they just simply wouldn't have it, right? They're like, no, here's $50. Meanwhile, I had like $700-800 in my pocket, and I'm trying to show them, they're like, no, I don't need your money. In fact, I should be paying for the hotel because you saved me. But they wouldn't have it. They, they forced that $50 on me. And so I took it and moved on, and eventually found my way to Vancouver about a month later. So I ended up spending a month up in Terrace. I went to pick mushrooms for a bit because I thought I was going to go pick magic mushrooms, right? But it turned out that they weren't magic mushrooms. It just turned out to be just regular mushrooms, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that turned out to, like a really great experience for me. So I wonder, if all of that was directed in that direction. But, even at that time, John, I was like sound asleep. Right. I had, I had a little bit of an awakening in the 90s, and then I fell asleep, and then I really didn't wake back up until like 2008. And then even at that time, right, I was still, pretty hazy. And it's only in the last year, maybe even just the last few months, that I'm beginning to reflect on my own experiences in life as to what's happened with me. And speaking about this today is just had to recollect on that particular experience.
I use the Bible a lot as a reference just because I know it very, very well. I became a Christian later in life, and there's a Bible verse. I can't pull all the verses out of my head, but I can pull enough of it out to Google it and find it if I don't know what the verse is. There's a verse that talks about entertaining people and how you might be entertaining angels unaware. Those two may have been angels.
Mm-hmm.
And to them, you may have been an angel.
Yeah, that's very interesting way to look at it.
And just if we do have a guardian, let's say a guardian angel, or again, whatever you want to call it, higher self, whatever that case might be, there's got to be a time when that entity can take over, and where we don't have maybe a recollection, our body is still moving around, but our consciousness is like we are when we're asleep. So
Mhm.
it was like sleepwalking.
Now, I found it interesting, John. Like earlier on, you had mentioned that when you had this NDE experience, it never really had an impact on you, and you just carried forth in your life, like most young people do. And when was it that that I'm sure it was like after your second experience we're going to talk about at the conference, but just to go around that, like how did that experience have an impact on your awakening and realizing your own awareness and your own consciousness?
I think what that was part of the road, that I had to travel, which I usually pick the hardest roads to travel. Matter of fact, there's a book I read right around that time called The Road Less Traveled, and I saw a lot of myself in that book. That event basically got the ball rolling, and a few years later, I came to realize that the life I was living was just going nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
There was, again, and I think a lot of us come to that point in our lives, in maybe our 20s, maybe our 30s, maybe younger, where we just start questioning, why am I here? What is this? What's going on? Why do I proceed and go forward? My second NDE was a suicide attempt. And they say we might go into that one, I think, later. But that got me in to a state where I was trying to give up drugs and alcohol and get my life straightened up. And I had other catastrophes happening in my life. It was about 2 years later. I had other catastrophes happening in my life that caused me to start questioning a lot where I was, where I was going, who I am. And that's when I got into religion. And that was a good move for me because I needed something to hold on to. I needed, a belief system, something, to give me hope. And where we get to a point where we have no hope, at a certain age. And it's real easy. I certainly can identify with people who have attempted to take their own lives, because at that moment in my life, on that second time, I had no hope. There was just nothing there. And so it's like, you know what? I'm done. I'm getting off the train. There's Bill Hicks has a really good comedy skit I really use a lot. And it's talking about, it's just a ride. It's just a ride. You get off the ride whenever you want. The ups and downs, you start getting a little woozy from all those ups and downs. And, he basically says, hey, you get off the ride whenever you want. It's just a ride. So that, it came into a time in my life, I was like, you know what? I'm kind of done with this ride.
Yeah.
But then it got me into religion, and that started me down that path. So I think that first NDE, even though it didn't seem to have a lot of impact, looking back on it now, I would have to say there was a tremendous amount of impact there.
Now, when you, a lot of people, when they go through traumatic experiences, right, they turn to religion. Right now, I'd like to understand, we have like two versions of religion happening here, right? One, we have the religious dogma that's created with all religions, right? There's no one particular religion. I'd like to understand when you reverted to religion and reverted to understanding yourself within it. Did you approach it from the dogma way, or did you approach it from like a totally different way, from a new way of thinking, from an esoteric way of thinking, rather than what they would tell us in church?
Yeah, it didn't get esoteric until almost 20 years later, after I'd gotten into religion. But I'm not one that takes any steps lightly. So when I do dive in to anything, any activity, doesn't matter what it is, I go full force. I go full hog. So there was that time, 1983, December 31st, 1983. I'll never forget. Right before midnight, I met some friends. I was going through some hard times, and I'd already tried committing suicide, so I was trying to recover from that. And I had some Christian friends that invited me to church, and I'm like, you know what? I'd gotten high just a few hours earlier, and I'm thinking, why am I doing this? This has been leading me nowhere. Why am I getting high? And then they came by and invited me to church. I'm like, all right, what the heck? I'm just going to go check it out. That's when I accepted the Lord and started down that path. Wasn't shortly after that. Well, let me back up a little bit. I was put into a what they call a full denominational Bible believing Christian church. So it was very well balanced. And I'm thankful, actually. I tell people the two smartest people I think I've ever known was my mother and my pastor. My pastor taught the most important thing that he taught us is to don't take his word for anything. There's the book. Go search it. Go look for yourself. I'm going to give you some, guidelines, and I'm going to try to, get you down a particular path, but it's your responsibility to believe or disbelieve.
Mm-hmm.
So after a year or so, I decided that maybe going into the ministry was for me. So I actually went into Bible college and took 3 years of Bible college.
Beautiful.
The pastor taught right there at the church.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that got me into the exoteric biblical teaching. So that's where I learned the Bible extremely well. And obviously later on in life, I started questioning. After 10, 12, 15 years of the religious life, I started questioning things because we read things in the Bible that make no sense. And, for me, those are, I like what Greg Bornstein, one of your other people that are on the show, he talks about open loops. And so I had a whole bunch of open loops. And I'm like, I got to close these loops because this doesn't make sense. And being that I came from a full Bible believing church, a lot of my friends would say, well, we're New Testament Christians. We don't look at the Old Testament. And it's like, well, the Old Testament's the foundation of the Bible.
Is there
I was taught Old Testament and New Testament equally.
Is there such a thing as that, John? Like Old Testament Christians and New Testament Christians?
Now that I've learned it more esoterically, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But for most Christians, they don't. It's really hard to get through the begats and the begottens and the God commanding the people to go down and murder all these people. It's really hard to get through that. The Old Testament is not an easy book to get through.
It's very violent, I found. It
is very violent. It's considerably different than the New Testament. And again, exoterically, it's very difficult to deal with. And that's where my struggles began. It's like a loving God is telling these people to go down and utterly destroy another people's and even their animals, kill the animals even, for goodness sakes. But save the virgin girls for yourself. And something there just didn't trigger to me. And it's like, what? I got to close this loop. I can't leave this open. So anyway, let's just, because we probably will touch on this next time too. That brought me going down an atheist path. I rejected God. I said, you know what? I can't deal with this. This just doesn't make any sense. I started doing a lot more research and started finding that the Bible is not a history book. Anybody who thinks they're reading a history book, they better think again. It's a very esoteric book. There's a lot of stuff in there, but you can't pinpoint. What got me started is trying to pinpoint the Jesus character in history, and you can't find him in history. Well, I shouldn't say that. You can find him in history, but you can't find him in the history that the Bible portrays him in. And that's just an impossibility. If this man existed in that time, there would have to be contemporary writing that would talk about this person in that time. And you can't find him.
I found that there's a little bit of evidence of a man named Jesus, and you find his story in India that says came from the east, and he settled he came from the west and he settled in the east, and then he went up to China, Tibet, Japan, and created some sort of a movement there, and then came back to, I believe it's Kashmir, and died there, and is currently buried there, right? And then he has the stigmata right? From the crucifixion. So some people, that I've talked to say that maybe this person did exist at some point, and maybe his people lifted him off the cross, he survived. But I'm not so sure about that, John, because after having talked to Michael Feely, on numerous occasions, and having heard, his argument about the Bible, I'm kind of rolling with him, right? About being esoteric, that the person actually didn't exist, and they're all metaphors. And that's essentially what you're saying as well, that they're metaphors, and, it's a coded book.
Yeah, in a way, I would say that the stories that we get are an amalgamation, because there's also about 100 years prior to Jesus's time, there's stories of a savior type being that we have pretty much proof of that it did exist. So I think that there was an amalgamation going on. And if you think of it like this, what I think finding the direction I started moving, it started helping me a lot to make sense of everything, is mythologies need a small thread of truth in order to stay alive. You can think of a mythology as the book that holds the story. So the myth that we get is holding a story, but it's not necessarily the story that we're reading. If I'm getting through with that, it's
Yeah,
very esoteric.
Yeah, I'm following you. Michael Feely talks just like that as well, and I totally get what you're saying.
If you want, there's let's see, if somebody wants to actually research, there's a bunch of literature by Ralph Ellis that actually tracks down the character. I've got just about all of his books, and he tracks down the Jesus character and shows you through history how this character that we're reading about is about 30 to 40 years out of time. And if you think about, if you're willing to go down that road, if you're not super religious and you're willing to go down that road, you think about some of the stories where it talks about the prophecies. Let's say the prophecy of the temple being destroyed. Well, that wouldn't be a prophecy if the temple was already destroyed and they wrote the story afterwards, which appears to be the case.
Yeah, and they wrote it down as such.
Right. So, they wrote it down as a prophecy, but what they did is they stole 30 years or 40 years from the story and put it back 40 years. So that this Jesus character, whoever that Jesus character was, I'm not saying there was or there wasn't at this point, but so he prophesied and saw that the temple was going to be torn down. And then, of course, he used his own body as a descriptor. People knew that there was multiple levels of that story. The story is that the temple he was talking about was his body. And again, if you go to, like Michael Freely talks about and other people talk about, there's an esoteric story there that goes back thousands of years. And then when you get into the pyramid stuff and you look at the initiations of the pyramids and how people were literally killed, darn near killed, I should say, for 3 days in the tomb, and then come out of the tomb and they come out different people. I think that's what the Great Pyramid was. It was an initiation device, besides possibly being other things.
How interesting. I like that. I really like that, because the pyramid's really connected with sound and vibration and distortion, and that does make a lot of sense. I like that. I really do like that, John. That makes a lot of sense as to like one of the functions for the pyramid. Now, what I'd like to get to, John, is when you turned to religion, and then to atheism, and then now you believe in the Christ consciousness, the cosmic consciousness. How has this helped you to understand your NDE experiences and and reflect on them, like, has your, ideas or, interpretation of them, I'm sure has changed over the years, but how did like religion help you to connect with this experience and to fully understand it so that you can share your experience with other people?
I, after going down the atheist path for a short period of time, I didn't have to spend as many years going down that path as I was in the religious path, because I came to understand that in most cases, an atheist is as fundamental as a lot of the fundamental Christians are.
It's a religion.
And well, I shouldn't say all of them. I don't have to lump everybody in the same basket, but in general, they kill the spirit. There's no such thing as anything that isn't seen. And my experience in 1983, I could not put that away, because things happened to me that were more than just inside my head. So the spiritual part, whatever that was that occurred to me back then, I couldn't throw that away. I couldn't say, you know what, this didn't exist. It's all in my head. There was too many things that occurred that made it, too real. But going down that path, I learned a lot about logical thinking and, the reasonings that we, they will say that consciousness is just an emergent property of the brain. I certainly don't believe that. But I got an opportunity to learn a tremendous amount more about logic and science and rhetoric, and through that experience, I got a chance to study the 7 liberal arts, which I'm a high school dropout, so I never was introduced to that kind of knowledge before. And then getting into that and starting tying things together, and then thinking, well, there has to be something then. So I started searching esoterically, which you could also use the word occult. So I started studying the occult, and I remembered a scripture reference in the Bible that says, "Be as wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove." And I thought, well, how do you be as wise as a serpent? And I thought, well, gosh, you got to go to serpent school. How else are you going to be as wise as a serpent? So the occult didn't scare me away after, going down those paths. Obviously, as a Christian, they're like, stay away from that occult. You don't want anything to do with that stuff. But then once I got into that, what, again, you call esoteric or occult, it means the same thing. Occult just means, hidden. Esoteric just means not known by everybody, which is kind of mean it's hidden. It's the same thing. It's just a different name. So I started looking at the esoteric stories, and the more and more I learned, the more I put together with history, and the deeper I got into that there being more than just a surface story there. Way more than a surface story there. And that got me into even deeper and deeper and deeper into the esoteric. There was a point in my life here just in the last 4 or 5 years, I started getting into a gentleman called Rudolf Steiner, who died in 1925, who has quite a bit of lectures, thousands of lectures out there.
I've heard a few of those.
Yeah. And I was listening to some of it. As a matter of fact, I was listening to How to Know Higher Worlds and Its Attainment. And everything he was talking about, I had already learned, I already knew about. I was relatively certain that it was all factual. And at that moment, it clicked, and I crossed the veil, stepped over the other side for just a moment, and I was never the same after that.
Let's hit up a question here in relation to what you're talking about. I've kind of been waiting on this. It's from Truth Seeker. And Truth Seeker asks, John, when was the last time you thought about this?
This being what?
I'm thinking the NDE experience. Truth Seeker, maybe you want to clarify on that question, please? Let me jump to Sandra Coppola. She says, interesting topic. I have a question. Can one have such an experience at birth? I find that really interesting because, some kids do have.
I don't see why not. The
Yeah.
more and more I've learned the esoteric, and the more I've gotten into Rudolf Steiner, and you understand that we are not just this meat suit. That we are, in actuality, matter of fact, if you read a lot of his writings, you will find that we have 7 bodies. But if you read a little bit more, you'll find out that we actually have 9 bodies, and that certain times in our lives, things occur, spirits, egos, things come upon the body as we are progressing. So yeah, I don't see any reason why somebody couldn't have that experience at birth.
I wonder how it would impact the baby. Say you're being born and then, you go on the verge of death, you have that NDE experience, you come back, but you're so young. I wonder if they would remember that, or whether that's like a reminder to them of who they are, and, and kind of have that effect on them for the rest of their life, maybe without them understanding as to like why they're doing what they're doing. Very interesting question. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's really the case. For me, as a child, I've had odd things occur, and I was always uneasy. It's just in the last few years, I've told people that I've never felt comfortable in my skin. The last couple of years, I've become comfortable in my skin. I think when I really crossed the veil for the first time and really recollected it in full consciousness, realizing that I am a spirit inhabiting the body and not a body, just not a meat suit that has, some kind of consciousness that's inside of it. I think I'm becoming more and more comfortable in my skin. So I think that as a child, the veil that we again, let's go back to the Bible. There's a story in the Bible when Jesus was crucified. Earthquake happened, and the veil in the temple was torn from top to bottom. The veil in the temple represents the veil between the worlds, also represents the veil between the left and right hemisphere of your brain. So when that veil was torn, whatever occurred, however long ago that was, 2,000 years, let's just say, that gave us access to a portion that we probably didn't have before. Why didn't we have it? I like some of your other guests who talk about possible alien interventions, let's say. We were held back, we were throttled down, let's say, for some reason or another. Why or how, I have my ideas as to reasonings and stuff for that. But that baby, the question about the baby, that veil is there. As that child grows and starts gaining experiences in this world, in this life, that veil starts to disappear, or that memory, let's say, of that other side of the veil is going to start to disappear more and more and more as that child ages.
Do you think, John, that we access consciousness rather than being conscious? You know what I mean? Like, do you think we're like born with consciousness, or does this avatar work as an antenna that signals to the consciousness, and then we experience that consciousness through this avatar?
I think that we exist and develop consciousness, but also we have a tie to a greater consciousness. A lot of people call it the higher self. I like that, because when I'm talking to non-Christians, I use the letter, the HS. And if I'm talking to Christians, I use the letter, the HS, for the Holy Spirit. But it's, it depends on who I'm talking with. Again, I've come to that. Your question you asked earlier is how has it affected? I've come to realize, again, going back to the Bible, that I'm here to uplift. And to the Christian, I'm a Christian. To the atheist, I'm an atheist. To the Muslim, I'm going to do my best to be a Muslim. I'm going to speak to them on the level that they can understand. And that's why I've dived so deeply into religions and the esoteric meanings and the exoteric meanings, because I need to be able to answer when somebody has a particular question. I need to be able to answer in a meaningful way. So in my studies of alchemy, I now also use, and I love the word, boil it down. Or when I learned, when I taught myself the car stereo business, being a high school dropout, but I never stopped learning. So one of the things I remember in the books I was reading, teaching myself audio and sound theory, was the KISS theory, which is, keep it simple, stupid. You can go way down a rabbit hole, let's say designing a crossover for a speaker, but chances are the simpler you make it, the simpler it is. It's going to do pretty much the same thing. It's going to be a whole lot easier on you. So boiling it down for me is kind of what I want to do. I'd like to be able to lift everybody up around me, by communicating on a level that they can communicate at.
Yeah, I like that. It's I'm interpreting it as when I would talk to my children, or when I would talk to my grandchildren, the level of awareness is different, right? So when I speak to people my own age, so to say, I'm going to try to talk to them at the same level. But then when I'm talking to my children, I have to keep in mind that their awareness is not as heightened as mine is, or as increased with life experience, right? So I have to speak to them at a particular level. My grandbaby, I have to talk to her at a particular level, because if I start talking about quantum physics with my little grandbaby, she's not going to understand it, right? But if I talk at her level, then she's going to be able to communicate with me. And I like that you're approaching, life and people that are in these religious groups at their level, instead of, trying to, preach your own religion onto them, trying to convert them, right? Because that's something I find very distasteful within religions themselves, is where they say, I'm superior, you have to convert to my religion, then you'll go to heaven, or otherwise you won't, right? So I like that you're going to their level and speaking with them, at their intellect, right? Because it's a container, right? Religion is a container, and you're limited to a certain memory bank and can't really go outside of that. I totally
agree. That's the one area, as when I became a Christian, the one area I struggled with is proselytizing. Being a relatively introverted person, I'm not really outgoing and stuff like that. But the churches encourage you to go out and proselytize. And I just never thought that selling, religions was just the way to go. But I found that I had to admit, I had to come to a time in my own life that, did I use religion as a crutch? Absolutely. Now, how bad would it have been if somebody had come around back when I needed a crutch and kicked that crutch out from underneath my foot? When I needed it and I was getting my life straightened up and I had to have something to hold on to, who am I to kick anybody's crutch out from underneath of them?
Yeah, exactly. It's rude.
No, it really is. So that has changed. When I was going down my atheist stage, I was trying to kick crutches out left and right, and I'm like, wait a second, and I had to think about that. And that's the self-examination that I think is part of the esoteric work that we do. It's self-examination. You have to go within. You have to, being in the music industry, like I've been forever, and into electronics, I love the music. Pink Floyd, Tear Down the Wall. It's the inner work. The only way you're ever going to cross that veil, if you want to cross that veil and not have to die to do it, you can do it. Esoteric teaches us if you die before you die, then when you die, you're never going to die. There's a lot of stuff out there that I got into, and it started making sense. The more and more I got into it, it started making sense. So I did the inner work, and that's what it took before I was able to cross the veil. And one thing I've realized is there's things in the Bible. There's a lot of truth in the Bible. It says only the pure in heart shall see God. So what does that mean? That means you've done the inner work, you've done the shadow work, you've dealt with the demons, the darkness that's in you, the pain, the suffering, whatever you've gone through in your life, you've come to terms with it. You can look yourself in the mirror and you can no longer lie to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's on my Facebook page, to thy own self be true. It's a statement that I hold on to.
Oh yeah, and that's the words, because you can't lie to yourself, because the minute you start lying to yourself, game over.
Right.
You start going into that matrix and you start falling into that program, and it's a very destructive path if you lie to yourself. We'll do this final question here, John, before we end our stream for the afternoon. We just had a porn poster come onto our sacred place here and try to destroy it by posting pornography, and all our moderators are asking what to do with them. So just quickly, guys, if you see somebody come on and post porn, block them from the channel. If you hide them, then they're only hidden for a certain amount of time, and then they can come back and continue to post porn and destroy our sacred space. So it's just best to block them. So here's a question, John, a final one. It's from Rutgers, Los Angeles. It says, John, are there any aspects or events of the occult that made you reflect on any portions of the Bible?
Oh, any aspects? I'm not absolutely sure where they want to go with the question. I guess my answer would be the whole entire Bible is an occult book from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding right now to date is the Bible is a story of you and it's a story of me. It's a story of becoming conscious, finding ourselves on earth. The Adam and Eve story is becoming conscious, and now what?
Raising awareness. I think that's what the goal of the book is. And I think it's the goal of all holy books, whether they're from 2,000 years ago or whether they're from 100,000 years ago. The point of it is to enlighten you, and so that you begin to look within and explore the within and get into that state of love, right? Be in love with yourself, be in love with everything else, be in love with everyone else. And I think once you get to that point of, unconditional love, where nothing can really interfere with you, regardless of what the person is doing, I think that's like dropping the veil and lifting the veil, and you're ready to be initiated into that higher, form of being, right? Maybe the next level being in another dimension. Maybe, once you reach that level, you won't have to come back to the third dimension, and you can go, so on and so on up the ladder to reconnect with the source. But that's what I feel a lot of these books are all about. And they're very positive books. I have nothing against them. The problem that I have with all of these holy books from recent memory, from current, is how they're interpreted by philosophers, and they've politicized it and corrupted it so that it only serves a few people rather than the whole, where the goal of the information is to help the whole. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I think actually that you're exactly right. And let's go back to the regular Bible, the Christian Bible. The very first commandment is love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy soul, and all thy mind. Well, if you do a word study on that, first of all, what's your God? You need to define that. So I've defined it. I've broken it down, and I come to realize what it is. It's love yourself first and everybody else next. And, that's the inner work. If you can't look in the mirror and love yourself, how are you ever going to love somebody outside of yourself?
Mm-hmm. I love that. I always say that to people. When you wake up in the morning and you're on your way to the can, you walk in there, there's a big mirror, turn on the lights, you see yourself, and, just very quickly look at yourself, say, hey, gorgeous, I love you. Have a beautiful day. and take care of what you need to take care of, and you'll find that after a little while, that affirmation begins to really affect you, and it begins to change your life profoundly, and you begin to look at things around you in a total different light. Because maybe before, the magpies that were sitting outside your window were annoying, but after doing this practice for a little bit, now those magpies sound like music, right? So it changes you. And don't forget to do that every day, a few times a day, because the more you say that, the water in your body changes too. Because we can go back to Dr. Emoto, which I have many times. It's the power of thought and the power of affirmation, and the water that's within our body, we can clean that, make it like into crystals, and become that crystal body that we truly are, and not be deformed with separation and anger and loathing and envy and things like that, because that's lower emotional thinking. And we're trying to go beyond that and above that. We need to start responding with a heart, right? And be in love with all things and everything. So thank you, John.
Yes. Thank you for having me on. It was a great talk. I'm anxious to get together with you in about a week and a half.
Yeah, for sure, brother. I appreciate you coming on, giving us this upload, and sharing your experiences with us. I know those are personal experiences, so I appreciate that you come out publicly and share this with us, so that we can all reflect on it, learn from it, and take it with us as a part of us, and understand it at a deeper level in case it happens to us. Or if we come across someone in our personal lives that have had the same experience, we can, understand them at a much better level than we currently do without having this awareness. So thank you very much, brother. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
So guys, thank you very much for being here today, this beautiful, happy afternoon, Saturday afternoon. As you can see, the sun is shining. It's a great day, and we have 6 days to go before Humanity Unplugged. And that's going to be for 11 days, March 12th through to the 22nd. After this video is over, please go to the main page and click the first day, March 12th, and set the notification for that so that you don't miss out. This is going to be an awesome event, 120 speakers. We've got music, lectures, documentaries being featured. We showed the trailer earlier on in this broadcast on what we're going to be featuring on March 22nd. We have panels. We just have a lot of things that are going on. It's going to be amazing. So please share that homepage as well on your social medias. And I believe there's posters that are in the community tab. So if you guys are able to copy and paste that into your social medias and attach the link to our first day, that'd be really great and appreciative. And other than that, check out John on Facebook. Just put in John Mayberry, and he'll pop up. Shoot him a friend's request. Speak with him if you like. Go to our website and check out his profile page. And I'm going to put this interview on there as well, so other people can see. And that's pretty much it for me. I've got what do I got going on here in the next couple of days? We've got lots going on here. It's almost confusing. So today we got John Mayberry. So in 2 days, March 7th, guys, I've got Brad Olson. We're going to be talking about his book, The Esoteric Series. March 8th, I am with Kathy Mason. And along with Rob, that's going to be on the Mason Works channel. And as well on March the 9th, we're going to be on with Flo Karuna, and hoping to bring back Pim the Great on March the 11th. And then, of course, March the 12th, we're going to be doing our event for 11 days. So please subscribe to the channel, smash that like button. After the show is over, please drop down into the comments and drop a comment in there, even if it's like a little emoji, because it really helps the video to be served to other people, because the algorithm thinks that it's being interacted with. So help that out and share this video out. I love you guys all. Don't forget to say that you love yourself as well. My name is Omar, coming at you guys from West Coast, British Columbia, Canada. And I will see you guys in a couple of days. Keep an eye out on the community tab for further updates. Have a beautiful day, wonderful day, and we will see you soon. Bye for now.
Bye. We'll see you in about a week. Thank you.
All right.